Welcome to this episode of the Lake Doctor podcast. I'm Suzie Light.
And I'm Dr. Nate Bosch.
Dr. Nate Bosch, my favorite lake nerd. Who's our guest today?
Today we have Caitlin Yoder. She is the Watershed and Special Projects Coordinator at the Watershed Foundation. And we're going to talk about community, some of the projects she's involved with the Watershed Foundation. It's going to be great.
And we're going to talk about her hobbies, including joining the Native Nerds. It's a group that's looking at native species of plants in our community. Stay tuned. The doctor is in. Caitlin Yoder, welcome to the Lake Doctor podcast. We are thrilled you are here with us today. Tell our listeners and our viewers a bit about you, please.
Yeah, my name is Caitlin Yoder. I was born and raised in Kosciusko County, grew up in Warsaw. I went to Grace College. I'm a Grace College grad and had a short stint, not so short, 6-year stint working with Nate at the Lilly Center, and then have transitioned in my career to working with the Watershed Foundation, where I am the Watershed Coordinator, working on a lot of their projects and programs.
And what are you doing in your personal life?
It's a lot of gardening, a lot of mini homesteading, raising 2 rambunctious boys. Yeah.
What sort of gardening do you do?
I have been teaching myself over the last few years and learning to do like vegetable gardening. I started out with just a few raised beds when I lived in Winona Lake, and now we've got just a little under 1/8 of an acre planted in corn and potatoes and tomatoes, peppers, pretty much zucchini. Lots of zucchini. So I have this harebrained dream to preserve enough food for the winter. That's my...
Really?
Yeah.
So you're going to try to can or freeze? How are you going to...
All of it.
Okay.
Yeah. That's where the potatoes are coming in, because they're really easy to cure and keep, less complicated.
I grew potatoes last year. I didn't understand that you needed to cure them.
Yeah.
So explain that to our listeners, please.
So for potatoes, you have to dig them out of the ground. You don't clean them, and you have to leave them in a really aerated, dark place for I think 7 weeks. And at that point, they're ready to store long term. But I did the same thing. Like I said, I'm learning and teaching myself. I rotted an entire batch of purple potatoes 2 years ago because I didn't do it right.
That's the fun thing about gardening, and it's the fun thing about the Lilly Center. We learn as we...
Yeah.
Yes.
So what other secrets have you learned?
Oh, I've been battling vine borers for a number of years on squash and squash and pumpkins, any kind of vining plant like that. They're these little worms that get in the spring, and they will eat their way through the stems and just decimate your squash. So I've been learning to plant them later in the season, closer to fall, a July planting, so they're ready later in the fall, because at that point that moth is not around.
Oh, interesting.
So yeah, it's a constant battle against nature.
So it almost sounds like you have a hobby gardening farm.
Yes.
Sounds like you and Nate have something in common. Nate, you have a hobby farm.
Yes.
How's that going this year?
It's going good. The plants we grow is pasture plants for our grazing animals, so alpaca and sheep. So we have Valais black-nosed sheep, so we're raising those. And what I love, like Caitlin, kind of learning as you go, I love learning about rotating pastures, minimizing parasites, as you were just talking about, and just trying to have as healthy of sheep as possible. And there's a lot to learn about that. Both of our organizations will work with professional farmers on the agriculture or the livestock side, since we have a lot around our lakes and streams here in Kosciusko County. And so it's fun to get a little peek into their world as we do it as a hobby farm. I'm just glad that my livelihood doesn't depend on it.
Yeah, it's hard. It's
really
kind of humbling to do it on a small scale and still really struggle with certain things, and then think about my income doesn't depend on this. So
Yes.
it's less stakes for us, but
Yes.
it's high stakes for the agricultural community.
It is.
And
it
the
gives,
weather,
It gives
too.
us
My
a lot of
goodness.
respect for them, I think.
We've learned in our podcast that lakes and streams have systems.
Mm-hmm.
Do gardens and farms have systems?
Oh, for sure. Yeah, that's I've always been really fascinated by different systems in nature, and I think that's why I really like gardening, and like the seasonal aspect of it. Like there's, a time of rest, a time for planting. It's just very peaceful. I love that rhythm. So that's one of the reasons why I continue to do it even when it's hard. It's just really satisfying.
Sounds biblical in nature, doesn't it?
Yeah, yes, it is. Yeah.
It is, yeah. Yeah, I love, speaking of plants, I love thinking about the biology of plants. How do plants disperse their seed, for example? All different mechanisms. You could have an oak tree that just drops the acorns, which are just lots of nutrients, not very many of them, versus you also have the strategy of like a cottonwood tree that sends millions of seeds long distances, right? I love thinking about how do plants deal with water shortage or temperature stress or out competing other plants, or how do they avoid being eaten by an herbivore. So plants are fascinating parts of God's creation. It's really fun to learn about.
And I never realized the timing of a plant to avoid a pest is helpful.
Yeah, I do all my cool weather crops now in the fall, like carrots and cabbage and all that kind of stuff. I've just found it does better here in the fall because of the pest pressure.
Now, one of the things that you studied when you were here at Grace, I think, was accounting.
That was, yeah.
Yeah, and that is very, so from somebody who's probably got more of an artsy kind of background, I would think accounting's rather nerdy.
Sure. Yeah.
So
Can artists be nerds too?
Sure they can.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
But,
I'm just wondering
this
why you're just lobbing
different-
that just on this side of the table over here.
Different brains engage, different sides of your brain engage. Are there garden nerds?
Oh yeah, I think anything that you're like super passionate about and want to know everything about would put you maybe into a nerd category. But yeah, I think it's cool to be passionate about something. So.
And how did you learn more about gardening as you made this journey? Because you started with raised beds, right?
Yeah. So I mean, I saw a lot in my family. Maybe not my parents' generation, but like my grandfather grew tomatoes and sold them in a roadside stand, and my great-grandfather was like really well known in the county. Hughes sweet corn. He had I don't know, like 3 acres maybe over by the cemetery, and he grew sweet corn, and I went and I helped him plant the corn, and he grew some onions too. So I remember we had this little stick he made to like poke holes in the ground and drop in the onions. So I mean, I had that experience. But honestly, like a lot of Facebook groups I use for asking questions and figuring out what worked for other people to try. So this year, finding people locally. So through Facebook and then talking to people locally, I planted, I don't know, hundreds of corn and beans and stuff this year, and then nothing came up. And I was Googling it. I was on Facebook groups, couldn't figure it out. And then I saw a woman I met through a Facebook group at the farmer's market. And I was like, Brittany, what is going on? I don't understand why nothing's coming up. And she asked me if I had dug up the rows to see what was going on, like if I could see any roots or anything. So I did, and there were no seeds there. But I found a ton of ants.
Oh.
And so lo and behold, these ants, just like Bug's Life, were taking my seeds back to their little homes, and thriving, but my seeds weren't. So I had to put down diatomaceous earth, anyways, do all these things. And now I have sprouts. But yeah, just kind of that. And maybe that's what I like. I like problem solving and that community networking has been the best way that I found to figure things out. So.
I don't mean to go off on too much of a tangent here, Suzie, but do you know what diatomaceous earth is made out of?
Yes, I do. I do, because I've used it. I do. I've only had one cup of coffee so far today. Tell me, Nate, what
So-
is diatomaceous earth?
Made out of diatoms, which are phytoplankton. They live in our lakes. So they're the little algae that live in glass houses. They have glass frustules. And so even after they die, the glass little homes stay and persist. And they use them for filtering. They use them in cleaning agents, use them a lot of farm
For insects.
processes for insects. So pretty cool.
Yeah.
How did they get harvested?
I don't know.
Yeah, do they do freshwater diatoms?
Yeah, I don't know.
I thought they
That's
were
a good-
ocean diatoms this whole time, but
Yeah, I don't know how they get them.
So diatomaceous earth,
Yeah.
and you can buy it at a hardware
Tractor
store.
Supply, yeah.
Tractor Supply.
in big bags. Yeah, it's really handy.
And it's helpful to get rid of pests.
Yeah, it's kind of violent. Anything with an exoskeleton, it will like slice and dice and dehydrate them. So,
Let's get on to better topics. How about
Another
Suzie?
topic. So, what systems do you find intriguing, Dr. Nate?
Well, I, as I said before, I love thinking about, how do plants compete with each other? I love thinking about how do plants deal with herbivore pressure. So plants often will have spikes or really hard coverings like trunks of trees, things that can't be digested by other animals. I like thinking about how do they deal with stresses of water or temperature. And right now we're recording this during a really hot time. And so plants have to balance this need for pulling in carbon dioxide into their stomates, the little openings in their leaves. But whenever they open those stomates, they release water vapor, which then, if it's dry, then they don't have a lot of water, excess water reserves. And so to do photosynthesis, they need to pull in CO2 to eventually make the glucose. But they can't keep the stomates open too long because they're going to dry themselves out. And so I love just thinking about those balances and how everything's just designed so intricately.
So, Caitlin, you are growing corn now. Have you noticed the corn sweating?
everything feels wet right now. I'm not sure what's the corn and what's everything else.
People too.
Yeah.
So tell us about your work at the Watershed Foundation.
Yeah, so I get the really cool opportunity to do the coordination for a few of our cost share programs, which are we at the Watershed Foundation, what we do is we come alongside different kinds of landowners to help them implement practices on their land that will improve water quality. So we have two water conservationists that work with our ag community, and they are very experienced in agriculture, so like they do a really good job of speaking the language and helping problem solve for cover crops, no-till, all that. But the two programs that I get to work on are Healthy Shorelines, and then this new program that we have called Beyond Lawns, which is technical assistance, which basically just means someone can come out and give you advice based on your specific property, and then we have some reimbursement for the cost of implementing that practice through grants. All of our programs are kind of based around practices that are going to help slow down, spread out, and soak in stormwater as it's running across the watershed to filter out any pollutants. So for Healthy Shorelines, we are helping lake property owners through an informational workshop and some funding assistance to be able to transition their concrete seawalls into a healthier shoreline, which would include glacial stone and then ideally kind of a border of native plants. So that's going to help to slow down that water and infiltrate anything that like last-ditch effort before it gets into the lake.
Is a side benefit of that keeping geese off your yard?
I think that's the idea for a lot of these shorelines, and I think Lilly Center did a goose poop count in Winona.
The Watershed Foundation, when they were working on their shoreline restoration around the Limitless Park at Winona Lake, then they asked us to help out with a little research project on looking at plants and trying to keep geese out of that area. It can be an E. coli threat, but also it can just be annoying for people to have to walk through goose poop. And so that visual barrier, those native plants make a visual barrier so that the geese don't feel comfortable. And so they do have that extra benefit.
Right.
Okay, so healthy shorelines.
I'll say one more thing about shorelines too. So that's the water coming in. There's also nutrients that can come into the water from inside the lake from that churning of the wave action hitting that concrete seawall. So when we make that like steady slope of the glacial stone, it breaks up that like impact of the water coming in, and it doesn't churn up the sediment into the water there. So we're coming at it from both angles with those shorelines. Beyond Lawns, this is a program to help people to incorporate native plants into their property, whether it is like a larger area of converted grass to prairie, or if we're just going to do like a landscape like the Lilly Center has out front here, where you're using native plants versus traditional, maybe ornamental plants in your landscaping. The reason why we want to encourage that is because a lot of native prairie plants in particular, their root structures are really long, like a turf grass, it's like this long, their root structure. So
Caitlin's holding up about an inch and a half.
Yeah. Yes.
Just for our listeners.
Teeny, about an inch. But I think, I'm trying to remember exactly how many feet. It's like over 10 feet. Some of these prairie plants, their root structures go down that far into the soil. So it's creating these pathways for water to enter in as it's raining. So it's helping to infiltrate. And then they also kind of make like a net when they're holding the soil in place. So by keeping that soil covered and making those deep channels, the water's able to get in really easily versus in grass where it's going to
and soil doesn't run off when there's a heavy rain.
Right. Correct.
Cool.
Yeah. So, that's, TWF, our whole mission is to be able to encourage people to be able to do these different practices through being, helpful by providing information and resources, and then that little financial offset as well.
Yeah, those are great programs.
So, Caitlin, you talked about cost sharing. How does that work?
Yes. So a cost share is essentially a grant program. So we have an application. So if you are ready to pull the trigger on a shoreline or an agricultural practice or implementing native plants, then you would send in an application, and then if approved, you would complete the project, and then there's a final report. So the landowner is responsible for doing the work to start, but then we have a percentage of the cost of that project that we will reimburse you.
So does size matter? So I'm thinking there's a spot in my yard that I would like to turn into native plants rather than my green lawn. And since I live in the watershed, I would just call your office, go online. What do I do?
So we have the Beyond Lawns, the size thing. We do have 2 different programs essentially that you can participate in. So that's kind of why why we put it together in the first place. There are a number of different cost shares for large properties through like USDA, like Soil and Water, DNR, like those kinds of groups. But the cutoff for those is 5 acres or more, which in our area, a lot of properties are much smaller than that. So that was kind of the gap we were trying to fill by putting this program in place. So as it stands now, our Beyond Lawns Prairie grant, which funds a little more, is for an acre and over. And that would often look like that prairie transition where you are eliminating a large portion of your property and planting it into native plants.
So for someone who lives in Kosciusko County, if they might want to see an example of what that looks like, do you know where some of your locations are?
I do, yeah. So the best one to go look at would be at Leesburg, Harrison, or Leesburg, Harrison, or Eisenhower Elementary. Our pilot project for that prairie program was to replant underneath their solar panel fields into a low-grow prairie, and that is in the beginning of its 3rd year, so everything's really starting to bloom. So that's another thing with these prairie plantings is it takes about 3 years for it to look like what you would expect it to look like. So that's been a really cool process to be able to watch that come to life, and we've had the kids involved through a partnership with Soil and Water to go plant the prairie the first year, and then we've been doing diversity assessments every year after that to to get them involved and take ownership in it. But those are blooming right now, and they're really beautiful.
I've just been past the Eisenhower one just
Yes.
recently, and it does look beautiful.
Yes,
And
yeah.
what a great use of that space, and how innovative of you and the team at TWF to sort of see, like we were talking about before, that problem solving, right? So hey, we've got grass. Oh wow, we've got a mow under all of these solar panels, or we could instead have native plants and have all the benefits of those,
Right.
and then have less of the maintenance. What a win-win.
Yeah. Well, it saved them, I think, a little over $4,000 a year.
Wow.
And just mowing.
Each school, wow.
Yeah.
That is cool.
Well, yeah, for the total acres we converted, yes.
So you mentioned soil and water, and you also mentioned USDA. It sounds like you're doing a lot of collaboration.
Yeah.
Tell us about that.
Yeah, TWF and Lynn, our director, that has been kind of the MO for the organization from the start, because when you're working with landowners and on a watershed basis, you have to look at it from that zoomed out perspective. So when we're working with the landowner, we want to pull all the resources from all the different organizations that we can to make sure that project is a success. So when we built this program, we formed a committee with all those partners to make sure that we were addressing the real needs and that it would function well alongside the programs that they already have, you know. And with our group, we're on a watershed basis, not a county basis. So there is a section of Kosciusko County that we don't do work in. So Soil and Water was gracious enough with our seedling program, which is for properties under an acre. So maybe something more like the landscaping out front here at the Lilly Center. They are funding a number of properties outside the county, or outside our watershed within the county, so that we can offer that.
Explain that a little bit more if you would, Caitlin. So you were talking about there's kind of two divisions of Beyond Lawns, or two categories. There's the larger one, which was that 1 to 5 acres in size, because then there's a bigger, there's a different program with USDA or something for greater than, and then less than an acre. Is that's what you call the seedling program?
Yeah, it's just over an acre for the Prairie program. There are great programs through the DNR and USDA. Sometimes those have a little more restrictions on them. So I think for USDA in particular, you have to be registered as like farmland for a number of their programs. But we're able to make it kind of cut and dry. So if that fits better for your property, then you know, over an acre. I think we had one person apply with 8.
Okay.
You know, so. And then, the smaller projects are under an acre. It can be, we had one grant that we gave where somebody had taken up the grass and replanted it into like native plants with seeds. But we've had a lot of people apply and do plugs where they are, you know, just removing their front landscaping that existed there and replacing it with already grown native plants. Yeah.
That's really cool.
So a long time ago, Caitlin, maybe like when you were in grade school a long time ago, the Watershed Foundation focused on Tippecanoe Lake, and you have expanded your footprint to include more of the watershed. Explain that.
Yes. So the way Watershed works is they can be really big or really small. So yes, TWF started focusing right around Tippy, but at the request of the Indiana Department of Environmental Management, or IDEM, we've expanded into that larger upper Tippecanoe River watershed area, which would include Pike, Chapman, Center, Winona Lake.
Because the Tippecanoe River focuses and flows.
Yeah, all the water flowing through those lakes will end up in the Tippecanoe River eventually. Yeah.
And I think we've said in the past, like, no matter where you are in Kosciusko County, you're in some type of watershed, aren't you?
Yeah,
Nate?
you are. And sometimes the watersheds can be nested, which I think is interesting. So you can say, hey, what's the watershed for this particular point on this particular tiny little stream, which might even be an agricultural ditch, and you could delineate a watershed there, or you could go to a certain spot on the Tippy River and say, okay, where does all the water come from that comes to this spot in the Tippy River, which would be a much larger land surface. And so it's wonderful. Their organization saw needs in a broader geographic area and looked to expand into a broader watershed area.
It's pretty exciting stuff. So this is building community. Like you've got a water community, you have a gardening community. Tell us about why community is important to you.
Well, like I mentioned before, I feel like I had really good influences in my family of community builders, like my grandpas who had their farm stands, and one of my other sets of grandparents owned a hardware store in a small town in Etna Green, and that was a very much central hub for their little town. Everyone had their own coffee cup on the wall, and I spent a long time, like
Really?
a lot of time
So you'd
there.
go in there and you'd just pull your cup off the
and
wall?
She would have a fresh pot of coffee, and all of the, old people would sit and gossip about what was going on in town. So that always felt like really like wholesome and like a huge part of my childhood. I think also I was a really young mother. My husband and I got married when I was 21. And pretty shortly after that, had my first son. And all of my friends had moved away and gone to college, out of town. And I just very much felt like that need for a community, and was able to do a lot of work to build that for myself. So I think that through that experience in my family and being a young mother, and then in being a nature nerd or whatever, you just see how those the importance of those intertwining systems and how everything supports each other. That's just been a foundational part of my personality and my experience as I've grown in my career and my life.
So if somebody needs some help in caring for their lawn or caring for their garden or caring for water, what would your advice be?
So, I mean, we have a lot of groups and resources in the area. In particular, for this Beyond Lawns program, the seedling portion for the landscaping, through my committee, we've created this group called Native Nerds, like Native Plant Nerds. We have a Facebook group. If you go to Facebook and type in Native Nerds, it'll pop up. But we also plan to host gatherings at these different nerds gardens. They've done a lot of the work to learn how to do native plant landscaping in a way that is beneficial, for pollinators and wildlife, but that is really beautiful. And they've learned a lot of the lessons already, and are excited to share how to avoid some pitfalls, or things that worked well for them. So I think getting plugged in that way. And I know a lot of our groups have really awesome volunteer opportunities as well, and that's a great way to get plugged in and learn, but also get to give back a little bit to the effort to keep our lakes clean.
What I'm just thinking about, there's a master gardener.
Gardeners, yes, and master naturalists, yes.
Is where you can actually get certified in these areas. I wonder if there could be like a native plant version of that.
Yeah.
Have you guys talked about that at all?
Yes, we have all the ideas, It's just a matter of like winnowing down which ones we want to tackle first.
Kind of like a garden, right?
There's always
Well, you're planting a seed.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. So no, we've definitely talked about that, or even just being able to come speak at one of their meetings on native plants. And how that fits in to a traditional garden,
Right.
So, because I think they can. I think people assume that to do native landscaping, you have to like just turn your yard into a prairie, which is great. And that has probably the most water quality benefit because of the root structure, and that's what helps infiltrate and filter the water. But there are some plants that just swap really well, like purple coneflower, even that orange butterfly weed. Like there are a lot of plants that you probably you wouldn't look at it and be like, oh, that's a native plant garden. It just seamlessly flows into the landscape. Yeah.
So you were telling me earlier about finding a native plant somewhere and getting pretty excited about it.
It was that butterfly milkweed that Caitlin was just mentioning. It is beautiful orange.
Yeah.
I mean, there's not a lot of flowers that are orange. Orange seems to be less common than some of the other flowers, but butterfly milkweed is a beautiful orange color.
Monarch butterfly host.
Yeah, right? And blooming in sort of late June, early July, and really, really cool plant. Several milkweeds, common milkweed, and I think there's a marsh
swamp milkweed.
Swamp
there's
milkweed.
many
That's
varieties.
The one that I was looking for. Yeah, so pretty fun.
But the question was, Where did you find that milkweed bush, and what was the companion plant? You don't remember?
Poison ivy.
Yeah. Did you get poison ivy?
I did.
Oh.
I did. Yes. I am not a big fan of poison ivy, and I get the allergic reaction. I didn't as a kid, and that's something interesting that immunity can go away. As a kid, I could roll around in this stuff, but now as an adult, I get it. Just if I look, like even just talking about it right now, I can feel myself starting to feel itchy. So let's move on to
okay. Well, I was just going to say, you probably have a community of pals who are as allergic to poison ivy as you.
Yes, some of my students share that concern when we're going outside for different field labs. And okay, one of the first lessons is we need to talk about poison ivy and what to look for and how to avoid it. So,
okay. Building community is important to Caitlin.
Yeah.
It's important to you in the Lilly Center. You seem to be building a community of water advocates.
Yeah.
How's that going?
I think it's going well. There's many folks in our community that see the importance of water, see the stakes that are there for these water resources being properly protected. And people from government agencies can see that. People who live around these water resources, whether on a lake or a stream throughout our region, people who see the economic benefits of those things, people who are inspired by those things. You mentioned your artistic interests, Suzie, and I think, you look at, if you did a tally, my nerdy scientist mind thinks like this, like, oh, we need data. You could survey artwork, and I would guess a pretty large percentage of artwork is inspired somehow by water. And so water is really key and important to a lot of us. And so I think that does help bring community together with that. With community and with relationships, there needs to be a common interest there. And so if there's a value for water, then there can be community surrounding that.
I made a note before I came here that lakes are community builders on many. Like, you have the people who can afford to live on the lake, but like my family was the family that went to the public beach, and swam. But it's a gathering space. It's free. You pack a lunch and you go make memories with your kids, and it's really cool to me that people of all economic standings can gather around this resource that we have here to build those memories and build community, which is, I really like this Beyond Lawns program because I feel like it opens up the ability to participate in keeping our lakes healthy and clean and around for a long time, because it's something anybody can do versus like, I don't have a shoreline that I can convert. And I have my little hobby farm, but like I don't farm acres and acres of land, so I really like being able to include everyone in the vision of protecting our lakes locally. That's
so key, and kudos to you and to the Watershed Foundation for seeing that need and then jumping in and providing that program, because you're right. I think you said it before, Suzie, everybody lives in a watershed. And so regardless if you're right on a lake or you're 2 miles away from a lake or you're 20 miles away from a lake, what you do on your property is going to have an influence on a lake or a stream downstream somewhere. Right. And so empowering people to make a difference on their own property. And what I think is cool, I used the phrase win-win earlier, these are beautiful solutions, right? This is not, oh, I have to sort of sacrifice this portion of my property to give it over to helping water quality. No, you're enhancing your property with these beautiful plants. And did we mention, by the way, you don't have to mow that either?
So, not as often as grass. There is maintenance involved. I don't want there to be like the perception that you don't have to do anything.
Yeah, so maybe mention that. That might be helpful for people to know a little bit. How are these sort of native landscapes, how are they managed differently than a mowed turf grass lawn that needs to be mowed every week or twice a week.
So like, yeah, for grass, you have to mow multiple times a week during the season. They often require, like fertilizers, chemical treatments. So native plants, they are adapted to live in this environment. So they oftentimes don't need pest control, and that's the opposite. You want the butterflies. Most people are planting these because they want the butterflies and to support the insects. But because of the way their root structures work, they don't need as much water. They're a little more resistant to drought and to flooding because they're going to be able to infiltrate that water down. So, if you're spending a ton of time outside watering your landscape, that's going to be reduced a little bit if you have native plants instead. And in a prairie setting, mowing becomes the maintenance, which is maybe like in the very beginning, you're going to mow like 3 times in that year. And that's going to be to reduce weed pressure and to help spread the seed. So the timing matters, So, so we want the sunlight to get down to establish those native plants. So you're going to knock the weeds down. And then later in the fall, once they get the seed heads, we're going to mow again to help disperse the plants that you want. So, and then some precision invasives management as well to keep those from taking root. So, but yeah, by the time you're in like year 3 to 4, you've got a really nice base of the native plants, and it's kind of just precision, like I said, pulling out a calorie pear or thistle every now and then. But yeah.
Oh, thistle.
Yeah.
We have some thistle. I heard pulling it out isn't a good idea.
Well, with gloves, let's say.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's a key. That's a key
Yeah.
factor.
So I think, we have said the Lilly Center serves Kosciusko County. The Watershed Foundation serves the watershed that is part of Kosciusko County and maybe part of some other counties. But wherever our listeners are listening, and I'm giving a shout out to listeners in Dallas, Texas, and some in California, wherever they are, they have an opportunity to impact water quality by the practices that they use.
Yeah. And even if they don't have this Beyond Lawns program in their community, they can take some of these principles. I'm sure they could go to the Watershed Foundation's website, learn about Beyond Lawns, what sort of plants, how does the process work, and they could implement their own version of that in their own neighborhood, and maybe even pull their own native nerd group together in their community and start promoting this sort of thing.
Because their plants are going to be totally different than ours, in Texas. I've actually gotten emails from people in Texas and Pennsylvania and different states asking for advice. It is, we formed this group for our area, but it would be something that would be doable in other areas and other states for people to kind of pull together this community, like we've been talking about. Our founding grant that we got to put together the plan for this program in the first place was from a group called Village and Wilderness. And their whole MO is to help establish programs that promote microhabitats. So kind of the same concept. They're not necessarily a water group, but kind of the same concept as a watershed. They want as many little plots of habitat for insects, birds, etc., that they can get, because combined, that is going to help sustain our populations of pollinators, et cetera. So that grant cycle happens every year, I think.
So the Watershed Foundation and the Lilly Center are important resources in Kosciusko County. But wherever our listeners are listening or watching from, there are resources that serve them. Yes? So what are the barriers for people?
Yeah. So another thing that TWF has done for many years, even before I was there, is a number of social indicator surveys. So it's social science survey that goes out to the community, and it's gauging people's level of information on and willingness to incorporate certain practices, including asking like what the barriers would be for someone to do these things on their property. And for native plants in particular, and for many of the different practices, the biggest barriers are lack of information and the cost. Sometimes physical ability, ranks up there too. So by building our programs in particular to address those top 2 barriers, we're hoping that gets people kind of over that hurdle. And And our vision and our goal, especially with Beyond Lawns and our Native Nerds group, is to provide like that extended community support versus, we're here for the very beginning and now you're on your own, to be able to help walk people through that process of getting these established and to continue to be that resource so that they're successful.
So if I were interested in getting some seeds to be able to plant my own native species, where might I look?
There are lots of resources for native plant seeds. There are some really good online platforms. I think Prairie Nursery, Prairie Moon Nursery have seed mixes. Pheasants Forever has really good mixes. For maybe a smaller scale, one thing I love to do things as cheaply and as free as possible. These plants, because they're native, you'll be able to find them around locally, hopefully not in poison ivy, but to be able to go collect seeds from these plants is a really good way to access them for free. Or there are a number of different seed banks or seed swaps. Warsaw Library has a kiosk, and there's often native plant seeds there. Goshen, Mary Lee's Goshen campus, they have a seed swap every year too, and that is a really good opportunity to go get a variety of different seeds for free.
And aren't there some seed opportunities at the Lilly Center?
Yeah, so we have done several seed collecting workshops where people can collect seeds right around our facility here, and so that's an option as well to get seeds in that way. I agree with Caitlin. It's great to be able to pull those locally here. One, cost is good, but there's also an interesting aspect of the genetics of these plants. And so if we can pull seeds from local genetics of prairie species that have been here for a long time, those plants are going to perform better here in our soils with our climate than if we were to buy seeds from the state of Washington, for example, that are maybe they're the same species, but it might be a different genetic variety than what we have here in Indiana.
That sounds like a system.
It is.
Is that a system?
It is, yes.
Yeah. I know there's Lilly Center does a seed starting workshop. Is that true too? So there are some things to know, and which is where this like community support comes in as well. I know Native Nerds wants to do a milk jug winter. What's it called? You know what I'm talking about?
Like a little greenhouse. You use the milk jug as a greenhouse.
Yeah, because a lot of these prairie plants, they need cold stratification to sprout.
Yeah.
So you start them in the winter when it's cold, so they get that snap. It starts them germinating. So you plant them in that little teeny greenhouse and set it outside, and then by spring you have sprouted really resilient plants. So, but yeah, that kind of information is what we're hoping to provide through our community group and through different workshops, either in partnership with Lilly or with our Native Nerds crew running it. So, yeah.
Yeah, lots of options.
So, collaboration and community. And Caitlin, thank you for bringing that message to us today. We are thrilled that you were here sharing Native Nerds Facebook
page.
There we go.
We'll
Native
have a website
Nerds.
someday, I bet. Yeah.
Thank you so much for joining us today. Please make sure you tune in to the next episode of the Lake Doctor podcast when the doctor is in.